Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We're diving into a body of work today that presents this really fascinating contradiction at the heart of publishing.
Mm-hmm.
For so many people, writing a book is this deeply personal act. It's about healing, about legacy. But for others, it's a pure, cold-blooded strategic move. An expensive business card, basically.
Right.
And the source material we're looking at today says, hey, it's not either. In fact, the real power is when it's both at the same time.
That's the central tension, exactly. We're looking at a piece by Wendy Melrose, and she comes at this from this dual perspective. She's a publishing strategist and also a narrative guide.
So she's sitting right at that intersection.
Right at the intersection of, healing and hyper-efficiency. And the article, I think it surfaces something a lot of people feel but maybe don't have the words for.
Which is what?
How deep personal vulnerability connects directly to, high-level strategic asset building.
Okay, so the material sets up these two parallel paths. On one hand, you have the internal journey, grief, legacy, that's all captured in this children's book, Rosie Remembers. Yeah. And on the other, you've got the C-suite imperative, the executive who needs that authority boost in the market.
Two totally different worlds.
So our mission here is to figure out how one single thing, a book, can be both a spiritual altar, as they call it, and a strategic asset for your career.
It's a remarkable duality, and I think to get it, we really have to start with the altar side of things, the redemptive part.
The narrative guide part.
Exactly. And the story of Rosie Remembers is just the perfect example. It's written by Anne-Marie Deutschmann.
So what's the story behind it?
Well, it's a tribute. Her mother, Rosie, was a hairstylist, a German immigrant, and she started losing her memory to dementia.
Which is just a devastating experience for any family.
Absolutely. And instead of just, internalizing that pain, she transformed it, she made it public, she made it useful. The source actually calls it a form of ministry.
Wow, ministry. I love that framing.
It is. The core idea is that stories born from that kind of struggle become these bridges between generations. They're not just a way to cope.
They're an invitation.
A sacred invitation, yeah. To talk about things most of us avoid, right? Aging, memory loss, saying goodbye. The book gives you a gentle way in.
And the way it does that is so clever. Rosie becomes Rosie the Rosebud.
And
all her little friends, Betty the Butterfly, Busy Bee, they gather around when she starts to forget things. It's not a story that ends in despair. It ends in peace, with angels helping her remember.
And that's the key insight from the narrative guide perspective, I think. The power is in the framing. It's about transforming pain into ministry.
Which suggests that our most vulnerable stories might actually have the most public value.
Yes, that's a huge shift. Using personal grief not just for private healing, but for creating a public legacy.
So this connects back to Wendy Melrose's whole philosophy as a narrative guide, which is built on this idea. This quote, your story isn't random, it's redeemed.
Right. The very act of writing through the pain becomes a pathway to peace. The source literally says every page becomes an altar, a place to lay down grief and pick up gratitude.
Which totally reframes the whole effort. It's not a chore, it's a release.
And it removes that barrier of feeling like you're not qualified. The material is really clear on this. You don't need a writing degree. You don't need a huge platform.
You just need the willingness to start.
The drive has to come from inside, from that need for healing or for legacy.
Okay, so that leads us perfectly to the pivot. How does that same process, capturing something so deep and human, suddenly become a high-leverage tool for, say, a Fortune 500 CEO?
This is where she puts on her other hat. The publishing strategist hat.
Right.
And the argument is all about market reality. While we celebrate the personal stories, the strategist says a book is the ultimate authority booster for an executive. It is a calculated strategic move.
Okay, so let's break down that mechanism of authority. Because in 2024, with all the digital content out there, why is a book still this unassailable stamp of authority?
That's a great question. The strategist calls it an authority-building asset. A blog post, a social media thread. It's all transient, right? It disappears.
It's ephemeral.
Exactly. But a book, a physical bound book, it signals permanence. It signals a level of commitment and intellectual rigor that you just can't match online.
The psychological impact is huge.
It's immense. It tells the world two things. First, I am an expert who has taken the time to synthesize my knowledge. And second, I am a thoughtful leader.
And in a crowded industry, that's everything. Every executive has a LinkedIn profile, but very few have a book. It immediately separates you.
You're no longer just participating in the conversation. You're shaping the conversation. You're the one defining the trends, not just following them.
Which leads directly to a quantifiable return, the business multiplier effect they talk about.
Yeah, let's unpack that ROI claim. The article says executives often report that just one speaking gig or one consulting deal pays for the entire cost of the book.
Several times over.
Several times over. And that's because the book acts as a filter. It attracts the highest value clients, the partnerships that are already sold on your philosophy before they even talk to you.
So it opens up new revenue streams that just weren't there before. Consulting, keynote speaking.
Advisory board positions. It boosts your personal brand and the corporate brand at the same time.
So on one side, the book is priceless because of the healing. On the other, it's incredibly valuable as this self-liquidating, high-leverage business tool.
And the final piece of the strategy connects both worlds perfectly. They call it future-proofing your legacy.
For the executive, it means their philosophy, their decades of expertise. Yeah. It doesn't just vanish when they retire.
Exactly. The core purpose is the same as Rosie Remembers. The message survives the messenger.
And that synthesis is so compelling. The common blind spot is thinking a book has to be one or the other, purely personal or purely business.
Right, they either a trap.
But the strategist is arguing that the deep, real, raw story, whether it's about dementia or a business turnaround, that's precisely what gives the book its authority. Authenticity is what fuels the strategy.
That is the connective tissue, absolutely. But it does bring up a pretty critical question, I think, especially for that C-suite audience. If authenticity is the key, how do you square that with things like ghostwriting or done-for-you publishing? I mean, doesn't having a team write it for you risk diluting the very thing that makes it powerful?
That's the exact problem the publishing strategist is there to solve. They're not saying fake your expertise. They're providing a system to overcome the biggest barrier for busy leaders.
Which is just time.
It's time. The executive has the ideas, they have the intellectual property, the stories. The strategist's team just acts as the expert conduit. They manage the process of getting it out of the leader's head and onto the page professionally.
So it's about removing the friction, the inefficiency. The leader isn't losing authenticity, they're gaining clarity and speed.
Right. Their voice is captured through structured interviews, guided programs. The team handles the execution. The leader provides the IP.
And you can see that reflected in the testimonials, right? They don't talk about flowery prose, they talk about process and structure.
Exactly. One author said, Wendy removes the guessing game from publishing by giving honest guidance, real support. That speaks directly to what a high performer needs. A predictable system.
There's that story of Sandra F. in the article, which I think is perfect. She'd been sitting on her book idea for 7 years, just paralyzed.
We've all been there.
For 7 years. But with the strategist system, she was published in a month.
A month.
That speed, that structure, that's the real value for the strategic author.
So ultimately, the final message seems to tie these two threads back together. It's not about becoming a capital W writer.
No.
It's about establishing authority, securing influence, building a legacy. And having a clear strategy is the only thing that separates an idea in your head from a message that actually endures.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what the material shows is that our deepest human experiences, love, loss, hard-won expertise, are actually the most powerful forms of influence. A book is just a reliable vehicle for that influence.
The essential truth here is that whether your motive is spiritual redemption or strategic leverage, the book is a thing that ensures your core message survives.
It survives the transient nature of life, of business.
Yeah.
And that enduring value is the real product. I mean, the article's final point is beautiful. It says, when the pages of our lives close, what's left is love. A book, whether it's about leadership or memory loss, is just a physical manifestation of the values we want to leave behind.
So what does this all mean for you listening? It means if you have a story, an insight, a perspective, whether it's deeply personal or powerfully strategic, it matters. And maybe more importantly, the path to sharing it is probably a lot clearer and more systematic than you think.
Absolutely. And to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on that idea of legacy. If your book really is a business asset and a legacy builder, what specific hard-won insights do you possess right now that you know for certain need to outlive your current role?